Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Sean, and this is Tone Flow Studio. Today, I'm going to walk you through a project that I've been working on where I take a very simple beat that I've recorded in Logic, uploaded to Suno AI, where I created an entire song with lyrics and vocals and built it up. And now I want to strip it back down and create just a chill beat kind of a thing. And hopefully this will inspire you to create your own songs and jams in both Logic and Suno and play around with it and experiment and just go back and forth and have some fun. So pull up a chair and let's get to it. All right, guys, so today I'm going to walk you through a project that I've been working on. It started as a very simple loop that was from a previous video where we talked about using Drum Machine Designer and Step Sequencer in Logic. And I took and bounced that out and created a more robust track in Suno AI that was instrumental track with a hip hop style groove, and then it developed into a song. I worked on an arrangement and lyrics and got it going into a pretty good working song. So now I want to strip it back. I want to take some elements from it and just continue to work on it as a chill beat style groove. So let me just show you kind of where we're at, and then I'm going to show you some of the things I'm going to do in Logic to kind of tweak it and make it more in this sort of lo-fi chill loop genre. So let's just pop over to Suno. Let's give a listen to the original sample. You can hear what it sounded like. Okay, so once I uploaded that to Suno, and you can see that was just the most bare bones, basic, janky little sample, right? Or loop, rather. Let's go ahead and hear what it sounded like once Suno did its thing. All right, so that's a pretty grooving track. I really like that track. But I just wanted to get in and do my own thing. So let's see, I'm going to just see if I can play you some of the version with some vocals.
You are a lover like no other, and this night that we had, and these nights of fire turning me up.
Okay, so as you can hear, pretty cool neo-soul kind of a thing. I walked that through in another project. That was pretty cool. I used some of my own instrumentation there. I didn't just stick with what Suno gave me. I played around with it in Logic a bit. So let's just see what I have going with this most recent iteration that I want to change things up and strip it back a little bit. We've taken it more into the smooth jazz kind of a vein, but let's see what we can do with that. That just goes on, and I'm not going to play the whole thing right here for you, but it basically just lays out about a 2.5 minute track. So I've downloaded the stems. So let's switch over to Logic. Now we're going to open up I have a blank project here in Logic. So I'm going to just drag and drop the WAV files into Logic. I'm going to do create new track. It's going to ask me the project sample rate. So for this, I'm actually going to convert the file to the 44.1. So that's going to match some of the other projects that I've been working on in case I want to swap, copy and paste in and out from some of the other projects. Any files that I've recorded, I won't have to do any type of weird sample conversion with the audio files. They'll just match. So convert file, and then they will import into Logic. All right, so once we have these in here, the first thing I want to do, I like to come up to the drum track because that's got the most transient here, and it's going to give us the most accurate tempo. And I am going to just right click, and I am going to choose apply region tempo to project tempo. All right, and allow drum beat. Okay, so up here, you'll see it switched. It was at 120 and now it's at 86 there. And as you scroll along, you will notice that the tempo marker up here is going to change. And then also if you access, you'll see a tempo track that's been created. okay, up in this panel here where you can expand that. And this is kind of looking like automation curves, but these are actually tempo markers where the tempo changes. You can also access that up here in your list editor under tempo. It's got them all listed out. All right, so if you need to tweak the tempo of sections as you're going along with a track. Now, Suno AI does do a variable tempo on its tracks. So if I want to follow the Suno tracks, this is what I've been finding is the best way to line things up, to make things make things line up with the tempo, as opposed to forcing all of these tracks to fit my prearranged tempo in Logic. So it's kind of different ways that you can do it, and you got to find what works for you. But if I'm using multiple stems from Suno, I do like to apply the region tempo to the Logic project tempo and just use that as my main track, especially if I have something like this where I'm just going to follow this entire drum pattern, which I'm going to do in this case. Now you're going to see what I'm going to do here with the keyboard sample to make it a little bit more loopy, just taking like a loop out of that. I could do that with the drums as well, splice those up and just find a section that I like and kind of chop it to make it sound more like a loop. But for this, I'm going to follow this track. It's not a full arrangement, but there's something I can work with that's already set, and I don't have to copy out sections and repeat sections. So I can use this as my sort of my guide. Now let's listen to the keyboard. Okay, so some nice things happening there, some nice dynamics happening, and that could be cool on its own. I could almost go back and revisit that and use that as something that I could do a different version of this track with. But for this, I want to go back to the original keyboard sample. So I'm actually going to copy this from another version of this that I've been working on. I'm going to copy this audio file here. All right, so this is the original sample. Now what I've done is that was from a stem with the earlier version from Suno. I added a little bit of a vinyl crackle, which you can find if you go to your loop library and type in vinyl. There's several that you can find in here that sound good. And then I bounced the region. So what you would do if you want to do that, I'll just show you quickly, even though I did that previously. You find a vinyl sound that you like. There's a few different ways to do this. This is just one way. You would loop it or repeat it for the length of the sample. And then you would run an EQ on this. You know, you'd want to narrow the EQ band down, cutting out the lows and the highs. So you'd open up your channel EQ on your channel strip here and really kind of make that sound real kind of tinny and really like that old vintage vibe where there's not a lot of audio fidelity. And then if you have these selected, the regions that you want, you would select them together and right click. Okay, a few different ways to do this. One is this bounce region cells in place, okay? So you can also do Control B to get that, okay? So that's what I did here to get that audio sample. Now I am going to keep this vinyl noise in here. Now here's another little tip while we're at it. So this is what I like to have this sound going in my tracks to create that vintage loopy sound, that chill vibe sound. But you can also create your own textures and save them to your loop library. If you have an audio region that you like, that you've recorded, if you right click and do export, add to loop library, it's going to actually let you, I'm just doing this to show you an example of one that I've done previously, but it's going to actually give you a little menu here where you can choose the category and you'll save it. And then it's available to you anytime you want to use globally in any project. So for example, my 7-year-old had a little plastic bag that was sitting in my office and he thought, hey dad, this would sound good as a sound in one of your songs. And It's just this crinkly crackle. So I thought, wow, that sounds like a little bit of a vinyl loop. So together, I can loop those out and have those going. I like to mix them real low. Okay, so that's a way to get a little bit of a vinyl sound going in the background along with your track. So going back to our main keyboard sample here, if I splice this up a little further, so that first figure, Command T, splice it, and let's see the second part of that. And I could loop those. Now, one thing that you might want to do anytime you're working with audio regions is if you double click, and you can come up here in the audio editor and just click and drag. This is create a little bit of volume swell, so there's a little fade in or fade out. It just could prevent any clipping. You might have clipping in your file, and this helps prevent it, even if it's just a little touch. All right, so if I wanted to repeat this out, I would just have to make sure it lines up. And you're going to always, of course, like I mentioned, you're going to want to check your snap setting. I've got mine to smart, but if you experiment with bar beat division, this will help you. Sometimes you'll need to change that in order to get it to snap to where you're trying to line your audio on your grid. And sometimes you'll have to really zoom in tight as well. So, okay, so the last thing I like to do just for that track is, there's a couple things that I do here. Some effect sends, which is a good way to, I always like to set up a reverb and a delay send, a bus send, so that you can have it for use for any instrument you want. And so you would just go to your send bus, you select one. Okay, and you could double click here and say reverb. All right, you want to do any key, you want to cut any bass frequencies out of the reverb generally, so it's not muddy. And then I do like this Valhalla Vintage Verb plugin. You could also just use a stock Logic plugin. Okay, and then I like to do the same with a delay. For this one, okay, same thing. Cut any bass frequencies out. Choose a tape delay. Set your wet setting up to 100%. I like to hit this diffuse button. It gives it a little bit of a warble and the tonality and the sound that's repeated. All right, so that's going to be my main loop. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the other track that I've been working on to go over further some of the things I've done on this track. Okay, a couple of things that I've done here. So in the keyboard stem from this version of the track, there's this one little stab that it does. The keyboard switches to a different chord, like a dominant. Let's listen, it's right here. Okay, so that little, I liked that keyboard. So I just cut it out and put it on its own track up here. So now it's going to play along with my loops. Okay, so I've got some other treatment on that in terms of the EQ, and then obviously the bus reverb and send. The bus reverb and delay send. So the other thing I did was there's a little trick you can play around just to get cool sounds. So if you take your audio file that you're working with, okay, I'll show you this trick real quick. Duplicate the track and say like Option drag and just drag, and then I'll mute this, or I'll just solo this out. What you could do here is if you come over to your region setting in your track listings here, and maybe make sure that the more panel is expanded, the reverse setting. Okay, and then you can come in and use your region cycle to find something kind of musical. All right. So if it's looping, you can create a cool drone sound. So I did that, and I created this one here. So I took it from this audio here and just found a spot that I liked. And then I duplicated the track and I added pitch shift plugin, the Logic plugin, just to change it for that chord change that happens. So that would be 5 semitones, which is 2.5, so 2 whole steps and a half step up. And in the mix, I've got it at 24%. If I do it 100%, but I like it just being subtle to give it some like an harmonic overtone. You can just barely hear it, but in the mix, it sounds nice. It alternates, and I think it follows the progression nicely. So if we listen to the loop, okay, so all together, it's just working together to create a nice vibey little track that's happening underneath my drums and the bass stem. I kept the synth in here. Oh yeah, we can listen to that. The synth was kind of a string type of line that I just have a heavy EQ on here. So it's just very mid-rangey, just high mids I've cut out, or highs. I've cut out all of the low, and it's super vintage record sounding. Okay, so the other thing that I did, so I grabbed this free from Isotope, this vinyl plugin that's pretty popular. Now this has some dust and scratch in it as well, but I don't really like to use it. Once you turn it on, it's hard to, I find that it's harder for me to manipulate and work with. I tend to like to have my little textures coming from their own audio sample in the track, but you can also do it there. Now there's some additional settings that are kind of neat, and you can actually warp your instrument to give it more of a lo-fi sound with some of these settings. Of course, these are meant to replicate the setting from a different era of a turntable. So the default's 1970, but you can click and add different mechanical and electrical sounds. And I particularly like this warp sound, as well as a little bit of the wear and the lo-fi settings. So if you listen to the keyboard sample on its own, and then with the plug-in engaged, so you can hear it just gives it a little bit of that extra just character to really turn on that lo-fi chill sound. So altogether, that's what's happening in this track. I've gone in and I've just added the studio grand piano. After this main sample repeats, I actually hit A to access my automation, and I've just double clicked in here, and I've just made not even an automation curve, but I've just dropped the audio down, the volume down for my sample. And in that section, I've just added this studio grand piano, where I literally am just playing whole note, just letting the root keys play. Okay, just whole note, just holding out the chords as I change, and the loop is still going, but it's more subtle in the background. Okay, and that's just going to create a little bit more space in that track. because I've got a guitar that I'm just jamming and soloing over. So altogether, that's what's happening in the track. I go ahead and put some guitar in there and just have fun at that point. So you'll hear it here on the outro with me doing a little guitar solo, but this is just one way that you can kind of come in and have more control over your track that Suno has generated for you. You can work with the stems and just make it something more of your own. So hopefully this will inspire you to go in and play around and do your own thing and just have fun with it and just explore the tools. I'm telling you guys, it's a lot of fun and it really feels great. All right, that's it for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me to grow the channel. And hopefully this inspires you to have some fun in both Logic and Suno and play around, see what you can come up with, and just get your hands dirty playing with the new tools that we have available to us. All right, so until next time, guys, keep jamming.